For the remarks, the good member from the 35th Legislative District, Representative Couture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I had many causes and reasons for being here, but this is a very special cause for me to be here. When my kids were born, I looked down at them and I didn't think I could love anything more than what I had just saw. And you know, Mr. Speaker, that as a dad, you would run in front of a speeding train for your kids. You would give up your life for them if at any chance, if you could. And I am a parent of kids with special needs. All 4 of my kids are school-aged kids in public schools in this state, a state that said that K-12, including special ed, was basic education. And as we talk about, and we should talk about what inclusion for kids in special ed looks like in our schools, we should talk about what equity for special ed kids looks like in our schools. But we, Mr. Speaker, are not talking about right now, unless we're talking about adopting this striker, about how are we going to inclusively fund special education. We are not talking about equity for funding between special ed and basic ed, Mr. Speaker, unless we're talking about adopting this striker. We are signaling to my kids and special ed kids all across our state that you can wait 4 years while we look at if we should fund you properly or not. When we have school districts all across our state telling us almost unanimously that we need to lift this cap right now. And that's exactly, Mr. Speaker, what this striker does. It raises the multiplier, and then it notices, like many have already previously said, that parents are the most important part of any child's education, whether they're special needs or not. And Mr. Speaker, how do we help those parents with special needs kids who don't have knowledge of the system, who don't know how to navigate IEPs, who don't know what their basic special needs rights and the responsibilities of the school districts are, who if they looked at an IEP, they wouldn't understand the differences between services and supports, who wouldn't know in the IEP meeting to ask if the service hours are actually being met for their student. These are answers we still don't know. And Mr. Speaker, funding special education is just one step. It's an important step, but it is not the only step we must take. We are in the bottom 5th of the 50 states for special education, partially because of our funding levels for it, but our funding levels just match our values. And our values are saying that you are not a part of basic ed. You are a part of something else. That, Mr. Speaker, is not inclusion. That's not equity, Mr. Speaker. I urge everyone to adopt this striker, Mr. Speaker. I apologize.
If I could remind the good member to direct remarks to the Speaker, please proceed.
My apologies, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I urge you to join me in adopting this striker. It's vitally important. I want to be able to go home someday when I'm done being here and we pass it on to somebody else. And I can go look myself in the mirror and I can go look at my kids in the eye and say that I left a better future for you than when we started. And that's the mission of both of us, Mr. Speaker. But if we don't accept this striker, we are sending a signal, a bad signal. We must do better, and we must do better right now. Now, the good gentleman said earlier that we spent, or could have spent, almost $1 billion in an inflationary increase. Now, this bill is roughly $360 million, the underlying bill is roughly $360 million in a fiscal note. But let's just consider that this body at one point considered giving minimum wage to inmates for almost that same amount.
If the good member could keep remarks directed at the policy before us, please proceed.
Apologize, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we need to adopt this striker. It's critically important. And Mr. Speaker, I want you to think of kids like mine and what their education could be if we adopt this striker. Thank you.